All right, everybody. This is Cody Zimmerman, and I am doing my oral presentation for New Testament Foundations with Dr. Brickle for the spring 2017 semester at Erskine Graduate School of Theology. The topic that I'm going to be talking about today is the utilization of translations in reference to the Bible. One of the key verses that I'm going to start off talking with that gets confused a lot is John chapter 5 verse 4, which in the King James Version reads, "For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first, after the troubling of the water, stepped into this made whole of whatsoever disease he had." Now, this verse is one that is one of the key verses that if you go through a lot of the English Bible versions, it will have all kinds of different words are in different places for this verse. And in some Bible verses or some Bible translations, it is actually completely removed. That verse is not even in some, I believe it's English Standard Version, and there's a couple other fairly mainstream Bibles in the English translation that it is not an included verse. And it's just because of the problems with the way that the verse is interpreted and the fact that the Bible that the verse itself does not entirely change the narrative of this passage, is how it's best been described to me. I actually looked this up in our De Silva text for this class, and I think it's on page 413, that there's a couple photos of the actual archaeological dig of this bathhouse that they're talking about in this passage of Scripture. So it's just these little differences that can change in Bible verses that can greatly affect how we interpret them. And so another thing that I want to talk about is the utilization of phrases that can be interpreted differently. And I actually have an article that I'm going to reference for this. It's by Munger, and it was actually recently published in 2015. And I have a little quote here from this article. Many people claim that since the Greek says brothers, it should be translated by the same word in English. In fact, the Greek does not say brothers. And this is my greatest takeaway from this, is this one sentence here that I'm about to read, is that ancient Greeks did not speak English. The Greek says adophilia. In these passages, the ESV includes an accurate footnote to its rendering brothers. The plural Greek word adophilia refers to siblings in a family. Now, this passage, or this phrase rather, this word, referring to brothers, and throughout most of the English translations, it gets simply referred to as brothers, where they're making the article in this passage that it is for siblings, for both male and female. And so this is just another simple phrase that causes huge amounts of conflicts thousands of years down the road because of the translation and the interpretation throughout history. This leads me to another reference that I'm going to have is from our D.A. Carson Exegetical Fallacies, the second edition, which was a required reading for my biblical interp class. So I was able to get this book out from my bookshelf, and he actually has an entire section of this text that covers word study fallacies. And just two of the key points that I'm going to make from this text really quick is the fallacy of semantic anchorism, which occurs when a late use of a word is read back into earlier literature. The example that he had for this is the Greek word "damanus," which can be translated into dynamite, which is the application of a prior word that's known, that a new word is created later on, and it changes the meaning of the verse, even though for the author that created that verse, it is still that same interpretation. So that's an important part of the hermeneutic, is being able to go back and reference what the author was originally talking about, even though your current concept of the word has changed. And this is something that is extremely critical when you look at the interpretation of any English version of the Bible, because English is such a diverse language that changes from region to region and from demographic to demographic, that different people may seem to be speaking entirely different languages, when in fact they're both speaking English. I know that we could probably go through the discussion board post just from the members of this class. I know that we have some people from various backgrounds and various areas that may know some jargon or some terminology that has completely different meanings for different regions of even the United States. And then you extrapolate that out to the rest of the world, and then you add in additional language on top of that. You can see how it becomes so easy for all of these different things to become intertwined and to be confused. If you go to page 49 of the D.A. Carson's text, there's a great little table on there, and I'm going to try and add this into my video if I can figure it out. And it simply has the concept of meaning versus the entry, and what a word can mean and what the reader can imply it to mean. And that is such a great way to look at it when you're looking at a biblical text or any other text for that matter. From here, I'm going to go to our green text, and I'm going to quote out of the section that was contributed by Max Turner. People often think of the meaning of words as if each one of them had an independent and separate existence. But no word can be fully understood independently of other words that are related to it and delimit its sense. This is another great thing to look at, that just by having a dictionary of a foreign language or an ancient language, you are not going to have the tools or the capabilities to completely understand that particular language. You have huge amounts of difficulty in being able to look at all those translations and understand what it means for that particular group in that particular time. So this is how we get into utilizing these translations throughout history and even in the current sense. And I'm just going to go to this just as a little cliff note. And if there's anyone that's particularly interested in early history of Pentecost in the modern movement, I would really recommend looking up some additional information on this particular topic. But it's A.S. Werler's New Testament, a landmark, and he actually was started off as a Baptist preacher and converted to Pentecostalism, and he wrote a Bible translation in the early 20th century that was a slight deviation of the American Standard Version that was published in 1901, I believe. And I will add that into the bibliography at the end of this. So it's just something to note, that this translation utilization in biblical understandings in not only English but in every language is affected by denominations. It's affected by political motives, and it can be work that is, and it should be work that is inspired by guidance, people that are going in the right direction and they're trying to do the right thing that I'm going to get to here in a second. But you also have to look at all of these translations and make sure that that translation is being done in the right spirit and in the right moment. So looking forward a little bit, I'm going to start talking for a moment about how that this Bible translation is a continued effort. It's something that is going on today, and it's going to continue to go on into the future. So I have another article from a group that's been working on this in the Vision 2025 and the Bible translation movement. This group is the Wycliffe Global Alliance, and they have been working on translating Bibles into other native tongues. And the number that they give here is that there's approximately 2,000 languages that do not have a Bible translated into their native tongue. So the quote that I have from here is, throughout the history of the church, Christians have viewed the translation of the Bible into languages as the world of an indispensable foundation of the sustainable mission of God. Translation is an art of the impossible due to the risky complexity of translational meaning from one linguistical medium to another. We have gained more and more insights into the beauty and the reality of Jesus Christ from the very reason that Christians, by and large, have followed the mission by translation option with all of the pitfalls and dangers of mistranslations in mind. So if you look at, and one of the key verses that they reference in the next group I'm going to talk about is Acts 1:8, to go out into the uttermost parts of the world. And so I really think that it is vital that we be able to understand these groups, to know that these groups are still going out into the world today, and they are, and there goes all my papers. But anyway, that they are going out into the world, that they are working on these translations, that it is still an ongoing and continuing effort, to be able to understand and utilize these translations properly and effectively can lead to increases in the church and just such a richer understanding to have a text in your native tongue versus having to translate it. I do not particularly have a gift for translating. I'm kind of dreading taking the Greek and Hebrew requirements for this program, but even in my limited amount of understanding of textual readings, if you read something in your native tongue versus reading something in a foreign tongue that you have to translate, that is such a greater impact if you're reading it in your native tongue, if it's something that makes sense to you. The other organization that I'm going to just reference quickly that talks about this is the Seed Company, and they have a very similar outlay to the other group that I just mentioned. And they reference the verses again, Acts 1:8, and then they also referenced Revelations 5:9 and 7:9. And they talked about how the verses in Revelations describe God's kingdom as being comprised of individuals from every tribe, language, people, and nation. So it is something that can be based in Scripture, that the translation and the utilization of that translation is critical and important. And one of the greatest things that I can think of to reference is that pretty much everyone in this class, I don't know anyone that has a native language of ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek, we are all dependent on this utilization of translation in our day-to-day walk with God and enriching that and continuing on through the future. And just a quick recap that I've been talking about this utilization of translations and about how it will continue to be a vital part of our Christian mission in this world. So I would just like to thank you all for your time, for your attentiveness, and I look very forward to watching all of your presentations. Thank you very much and have a blessed day.